Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More, and this is our first video in 2022. For today's video, I am going to broach a slightly different topic than what I usually do. What we're going to talk about is 5 reasons why you might want to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition in 2022. The first reason why I would recommend someone play Dungeons & Dragons in 2022, and this could be someone who's a new player or someone who is, you've played games for a long time and maybe you've stepped away from 5th edition or from Dungeons & Dragons for a while and are thinking about coming back to the game. These are some reasons why this is a good time to get back into the game. Reason number 1, it's very easy to get into 5th edition D&D. Very easy. In fact, you can do it for free. On the Wizards of the Coast website, there is a free PDF called the Basic Rules, or Basic Rule Book. And it harkens back to the old basic sets of the late 70s, early 80s. But it's a PDF format, and it is completely free, while also it is 5th edition rules. So you can use that PDF and make a character with it, and your character is 100% compatible with a 5th edition campaign being run by somebody who has the 3 core rule books. There's enough information in that rule book, in fact, that someone could run a small human-centered campaign of their own. And they would have enough monsters, with the ones included in that PDF, to supplement. Maybe it's a low fantasy game where the primary opponents are going to be various NPCs of human, elven, or dwarven type. Whereas, and there's not going to be as many monsters and gribbly things. But if you like a more political game, or if you kind of want to do the Caves of Chaos, say from the from the Keep on the Borderlands, and but stick mostly with more humanoid or human style opponents, you can do that with these basic rules. And it's completely free. Now, if you want to spend a little bit more money, the Essentials Kit is fantastic. Frankly, in a word, it is fantastic. What makes it special is that it includes rules for hirelings or henchmen in your campaign. Now, these are things that have been present in D&D, in the kind of the meta of the game since the very beginning. The idea of hiring, slightly better people than, say, your average man-at-arms to come in and go on this adventure with you. And they have found a great way of incorporating that into the game in order to facilitate smaller parties, or even parties including only one player and their character, to be able to go out and do the adventure, the Icefire Peak adventure that is included with the Essentials Kit. So that one piece of gear, that one piece of D&D meta knowledge, if you will, that is present within the Essentials Kit opens up a lot of doors. Maybe you are someone who, like, your child is really interested in Dungeons and Dragons, but they're having a hard time finding a group of friends or a group of classmates to play the game with. Well, this is a way that you can help them play the game with maybe only them and one other of their best friend, and the two of them can play together, or you can run a game for them and still have the tools that you need in order to have them get a more full experience. Another option, another thing that this allows for is if you are a person who maybe you live alone and you're concerned about lockdowns due to COVID or other reasons, and you just don't want to go out and be social. Maybe you just are not feeling social, but you still want to get a game in. Well, you can use these henchman and hireling rules from the Essentials Kit in order to kind of pad out your party and run yourself a solo game. And all you would need is a solo game oracle, which is something that is available on DriveThru RPG. So that's pretty cool. The adventure, the Icefire Peak adventure that's included in the Essentials Kit is a pretty gnarly adventure. I mean gnarly in the good way. It also takes place in Phandalin, which is the same location that is used in the adventure for the starter kit from the beginning of 5th edition. So if someone wanted to grab both of those box sets, you can actually combine them both together to create one heck of a start to your campaign with Phandalin as your nexus, your adventuring nexus, and they quickly will dovetail in different directions. But if you can weave the plots together, even just a little bit, you're going to have a lot of game in those two box sets. A mini campaign in and of itself, milestone it, and this will last you for a year of adventuring, if not more, if you're meeting say once a week or once every other week. There's also a lot of stuff that can supplement that material. The Essentials Kit gives you enough character creation options, actually, that you can continue to play with just that stuff for a little while. And if you want to supplement that with more information, you just want to dive in a little bit further, but not far enough to get the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guidebook. And this book takes the adventure locations of where Phandalin is and everything else that's up and down that coastline, all those cities, and it tells you all about what's going on there. It gives you, ideas of where these cities are, what's going on in those cities, what's the surrounding area, who are the antagonists, who are the protagonists, if you want to call them that. What are the different powers that are vying for control of this area, and what's the history like? All these questions are answered in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. It is a fantastic tool that you can use in order to make Phandalin and the surrounding environments come alive even more than what is already in the Essentials Kit and the starter set. So with those three things together, that is one heck of a start to a campaign. And if you get the free basic rules PDF off of Wizards of the Coast website, which I will put a link to that down below, then that's a lot of game for you right there. And you've spent probably less than, well, if you don't buy the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guidebook, you can get the two box sets probably for less than $50 American. And that's everything that you would need for two players, because you've got two different sets of dice and character sheets and all that other fun stuff, and you're just going to be good to go for a long time. So it is easy to get started with 5th edition D&D right now. Easy, easy, easy. The second reason why I think people should consider coming to Dungeons & Dragons in 2022 is the books themselves are widely available. One of the things that we've had to deal with in the RPG community for the past 2 years, as things have been developing with COVID-19 and how the effects of COVID-19 have dovetailed throughout the entire world and shown us holes in our a lot of our pieces of society that have been touched on this. One of the things that has hit is books not being available all the time. People running out of books, because let's face it, books, especially role-playing game books, are not necessarily high priority items for shipping when you're bringing it from, say, China to the United States, or China to Europe, or Europe to the United States, or wherever your chosen company's shipping lines are going. And so because of that, there's been a lot of smaller role-playing game companies that have unfortunately been experiencing some difficulty in getting restocks on their stuff. This has especially been hitting the Kickstarter fulfillment groups, as well as more of the independent or indie RPG creators have been having a real hard time with this recently. Wizards of the Coast is a much larger company with a much larger footprint, and they are having an easier, emphasize that, in getting and maintaining shelf presence. So their books are available. Not only are they available, but they're available in more places than just your friendly local game store. You can also find them in places like Target and Walmart. If you've got a local bookstore, they probably have some there. Amazon almost always has them on sale, and it's easy to get your hands on these. It's one of the most available role-playing game systems out there. Not the only one that's really available, but it's one of the most available ones. So, number 3. There's a lot of ways to play 5th edition D&D online. Now, these vary from Roll20, which is a kind of environment that you log into. You create an account with Roll20, and you can do so for free. And then you can run or play games on Roll20. It has an integrated dice rolling program. There's integrated text chat or voice chat and video chat software. It's not the greatest thing in the world as far as those particular pieces of software go, but it's good. And I've personally been running a game on Roll20 since about a month or so after the COVID situation started. And I have no real complaints. I think it allows people to keep on playing, and that's a good thing. So there's also other places, such as the Foundry is another place that's like Roll20 that incorporates a lot of rules or maps. Oh yeah, I forgot to say for Roll20, they have a character creator program embedded in Roll20 that the Charactermancer. And so if you pay a little bit of money, and it's not cheap, but if you pay that money and you buy the books on Roll20, then you can use the Charactermancer to make your character automatically and have all of your abilities and your stats keyed into the Roll20 dice rolling system already. So all you have to do is click on buttons, and it'll automatically roll your character's attacks or roll their saving throws or whatever, just with a click of a button, and you don't have to do any ad hoc calculations. This makes DMing a cinch. It's a lot easier DMing on Roll20 than it might be, say, in person, if you are really concerned about getting all that information correct. And if you're learning a higher level game where you're going to be using a lot of monsters with a lot of varied abilities, that can be a godsend. And Foundry has a lot of these tools as well. These tools were built with things like 5th edition D&D or Dungeons & Dragons in general in mind. They were designed from the ground up to work with these kinds of systems, and therefore you will get a lot of mileage from these online tools using it. The other one, D&D Beyond, not D&D Beyond, but D&D Beyond, is a set of online tools that, while you can't necessarily run a game on D&D Beyond itself, you can create your campaign, You can do a lot of the kind of rules work in order to make your NPCs and your villains and your monsters and have them all make sense. Or as a player, you can make your characters and go, and you still have to pay money because you got to buy the books online, and they're not necessarily cheap, but then you get all the rules incorporated into the character sheet, and you can just with a bunch of clicks of a mouse have a completed character within, say, an hour or so, which is a lot faster than trying to do it with pencil and paper at home. So the online tools for 5th edition D&D are some of the best I have ever seen, and I've been playing since the tail end of 2nd edition. I've seen a lot of different tools come and go. These tools are amazing. This is a great time to get into the game as far as online tools go. So let's look at number 4. There's a wealth of podcast, live plays, actual plays, game streams, content content any way you want it that will show you different ways to play D&D or Dungeons and Dragons. Now, there's stuff for this for more than just Dungeons and Dragons. There's all sorts of role-playing systems that have these available. Right now is kind of a golden time for streaming of Dungeons and Dragons material. And this material is focusing predominantly on Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So if you are someone who doesn't really know like what this D&D thing is and you kind of want to just get an idea of it, then you can go and find an episode of, say, Critical Role or Dimension 20, or if you are like a little more humor, you can find a YouTube show called The Stuff of Legends. And any one of these will give you an idea of what D&D is. They do so in a fun way. They do so in a welcoming way that embraces a lot of different mindsets, a lot of different ways of looking at the world, cultures. They try to do their best to showcase a lot of different methods of playing the game, so it's not just only the one. The best of this, the shining example, in my humble opinion, is Critical Role, because they are the giant in the playground as far as this content is concerned. But they do continue to set the standard. And if you just want to know what D&D is, then you can go watch what they do, and it gives you a pretty good idea of how the game goes. So that's a good way to understand what D&D is. And to take inspiration from that and say, you know what, that's how I want to run my games. I want to be able to do like a story the way that, say, Matt Mercer does for Critical Role, or the way that, I think his name's Duncan, I forget, I'm sorry, but the gentleman that does Dimension 20. Was Acquisitions Incorporated is another great game streaming group that they do a lot of fun stuff. There's a lot of things you can kind of pick up from those people on not only the nuts and bolts of how the game is played, but also the kind of fun, joking how the game is played. Because we need to remember that we're playing this as a game, as a group of friends. You should be friends with the people that you're playing with. You should be enjoying yourself. And that's one of the things that I think Critical Role does well, is they show that people can go from taking the game seriously to maybe not taking the game so seriously and having a lot of fun and joking around with each other and fart jokes and inappropriate humor and drinking from gas cans and all sorts of crazy things that just happen because they're telling a fun story with each other. So that's another reason why people might want to get into Dungeons and Dragons in 2022, is because they've seen these actual plays and they want to be a part of that in some way, or maybe you just want to be entertained and want to know kind of what your entertainers are doing, and so you want to read the rules and maybe play a game session to yourself, and that's cool. That's a good reason. So the last reason, reason number 5, is 5th ed, Dungeons and Dragons, is the most popular edition of Dungeons and Dragons that has ever been published. It's the most widespread I have ever seen this game get. And I saw the beginning of 3rd edition when D&D went from kind of a dying niche into an explosion of what seemed like a renaissance of role-playing that, yes, it primarily focused on the open gaming license and the D20 system, but then it kind of also brought up a lot of other ships, as well as the general populace kind of took a little bit more notice of this thing called Dungeons and Dragons again. But what was even more powerful than that moment, and that moment was powerful, was when 5th edition came out, and then when shows like Critical Role started becoming more and more popular. Because what that did is it brought Dungeons and Dragons more solidly into the social consciousness of our world and our culture here in the United States, and I'm assuming some countries in Europe as well, and other places in the world. It made us, as a culture, as a society, more aware of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing than we had been in the past. Because in the past, and we're still dealing with this now, there was this big problem in the 70s and 80s that kind of dovetailed into what's referred to as the Satanic Panic. And that set us back a long time because people were really worried that role-playing games, or Dungeons and Dragons specifically, but role-playing games in general, were going to lead their children down a self-destructive path towards horrible things that I can't really explain and elaborate on a YouTube channel without getting myself in trouble. That was this concern. It was a very real concern with some people, and it still exists. But for the first time in a long time, there's a true, loud, observable counter narrative that is being pushed by groups like Critical Role and Dimension 20. Is being pushed towards us. It's being shown to us and to the culture in general that these games are fun and people play them. People that we respect. I mean, you got to watch Matthew Mercer DM Stephen Colbert through a short vignette of an episode on an episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. How cool was that? And this is all happening because 5th edition is extremely approachable. There are other games that are better. And I say quotes because I agree that they are, the rules-wise, they are objectively better. The rules are maybe a higher quality than the rules in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Maybe there's more verisimilitude in a system like, say, Twilight 2000. There's other systems do gritty better. Other systems do, Vampire the Masquerade is hugely popular and does kind of the vampire thing extremely well. There are other systems out there that do other things. But what D&D does is it presents an approachable system that people, they feel like they can learn it quickly. They feel like they can understand it. And they feel like there's more to learn. Easy to learn, difficult to master. That's what typifies a 5th edition D&D game. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of come into and what they really kind of enjoy about 5th edition. That's why we get into so many rules conversations and rules arguments as we're going back and forth between this is what I believe and this is what you believe, and we get these interpretations and this push and pull, because it's that system mastery that people tend to kind of get passionate about. And it inspires them to really kind of dig into the rules and get into that sort of back and forth discussion. And these things occur because of the way that D&D is built. And this kind of combines together. It's this interesting like soup that doesn't really make a lot of sense sometimes. It doesn't really, can't quite understand always why it is that D&D has grabbed onto us and held on to us for so long. And why is it that this system is the one that grabs people? Why is it that this system is the one that has become so popular? I mean, why did Critical Role happen with 5th edition D&D and not with Pathfinder? Why not Call of Cthulhu? Why not the basic fantasy D100 system? Why not RuneQuest? Why not GURPS? All these questions that we can ask ourselves. You've got these other systems that are objectively more fine-tuned and more balanced than what D&D 5th edition is, and yet for whatever reason it was this system that grabbed people. And because of that, I'd say that it is worth looking at. Yes, look at other games too. Don't just look at this one. This isn't the only one out there. It shouldn't be the only thing that you grok onto. But don't shove it away just because it's popular. Grab onto it, maybe. Give it another read. Come back again and think about it and say, you know what? This is popular. It's popular for a reason. Maybe it's not the perfect game for me, but it's a game that I should learn and that I should understand so that I can have an intelligent conversation with people about it. And part of that comes through play. So whether you're new to D&D and you want to explore what this role-playing thing is, or whether you're someone who's maybe walked away for a while, maybe you got busy with life and role-playing games just weren't that important, and recently due to COVID and lockdowns, you've been a little, you've had more time on your hands and you just started to get a little more interested in finding ways to be creative, and this looks like it might be fun. Those are two good reasons to get into 5th edition D&D at this point in time. Or maybe you're someone who's new. Maybe you're young and you're just coming up into a point where you want to do this sort of thing and this looks like fun. So think about these reasons and think about what I said. Especially, I'm going to say it again, you can start learning this game for free. You don't have to buy the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual to be able to have D&D in your hand. You don't have to buy the Essentials Kit to be able to try it. You can try it with that PDF from Wizards of the Coast's website and get yourself started for almost no money, because at that point all you need is some dice. And you know what? They have dice apps on iPhones and Android phones that you can download for free. If you really just have no money but you still want to play, but you just don't have a budget for entertainment, those are options. If you are just really careful and you don't like to spend, then, the Essentials Kit and the Starter Kit are great investments. Get those. Stay with those. Don't get drawn into other things yet. Stick with them until you've milked every drop of awesomeness that's in those things. Anyway, these are my comments, my thoughts on why you might want to give 5th edition D&D a try in 2022. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed what I had to say, please like the video, maybe subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this, and I would appreciate it if you would let me know any questions you might have. Or if you want to share your story, just a piece of it, of what brings you to role-playing games in 2022. What is it in this year kind of that is inspiring you? Do you have a New Year's resolution for the gaming hobby for 2022? I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you all so very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the slightly new setup and the lavalier microphone. This is the first test of it. Peace be with all of you, and happy gaming.